Welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Friday, April 19th. What to do about North Korea? Senior financial executives arrested as authorities investigate illegal bond trading. And China's housing prices climb again in March despite new regulations. For months, it's been a stalemate between North Korea and the rest of the world. Despite posturing from all sides, no one seems to actually want to start a war. Now officials are gathering and planning what to do after the latest development in Kim Jong-un's rogue regime.
Was it a breakthrough or just another wall? That's what officials from Japan, South Korea, China, and the U.S. are trying to figure out. Yesterday, North Korea said it would agree to reopen talks, but only if certain conditions were met. They included removing UN sanctions and putting an end to joint U.S.-South Korean military drills. South Korean officials have called the conditions illogical and absurd. The U.S. also insisted that North Korea must give up on its nuclear development before starting negotiations for a long-term solution. North Korea has flatly rejected that proposal. So now what's next? South Korean and Japanese officials meet today in Seoul to discuss just that.
Japan, China, and the United States have a stake in the peace and stability of the region. At the same time, they have an important role in enabling peace and stability. I said to Unification Minister Ryu that we would like to cooperate within this framework.
And while China continues to call for a solution through reopening talks, Japan is preparing for any eventuality. The Patriot Advanced Capability 3, or PAC-3 missile interceptor system has been deployed as a defensive measure should North Korea make good on its threats. China's foreign ministry also announced today that China's special envoy on North Korea, Wu Jiawei, will meet with American officials in Washington next week.
Chinese leader Xi Jinping's criticism of North Korea and its military provocation may be pointed, but economic relations between the two communist states seem to be improving. A new bridge costing $356 million is being built in the Chinese city of Dandong. It will link up with a North Korean town over the Yalu River. It's being built specifically to strengthen cross-border trade. Chinese exports into North Korea were about $590 million last quarter, up 2.5% from a year ago. And according to Bloomberg news agency, North Korea's threat of war with the South and striking the U.S. with a nuclear missile hasn't dampened Chinese business sentiments with the North. Their bigger concern, according to Bloomberg, is North Korea's ability to drive down the prices of Chinese goods. Last week, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that China has to, quote, put some teeth to restrain the North Korean regime. U.S. Senator John McCain has also said that, quote, China holds the key to this problem. But as far as putting real pressure on Kim Jong-un, concrete actions from the Chinese regime are yet to be seen. 4 senior executives in China's financial industry have been arrested as part of investigations into illegal bond trading. The probe is looking into whether they and others in the sector scammed their clients to line their own wallets. China's largest asset broker, Beijing-based CITIC Securities Co., confirmed on Wednesday that its executive director of fixed income trading, Yang Hui, has been taken away by police. Shanghai-based fund management company Wangjia Asset Management also confirmed that Zhou Yu, its head of fixed income, is now under police investigation. The 2 other arrested were from smaller financial companies. The illegal schemes involve interbank bonds. This market has exploded over the past several years in China, thanks to regulators promoting it to reduce reliance on bank lending. But while the sector has boomed, regulations haven't kept pace. Observers say the market is prone to insider trading. Last month, Chinese authorities increased measures to stifle a potential housing bubble. It raised taxes, upped mortgage rates, and required bigger down payments. But with all those new hoops, housing prices are still rising.
Housing prices in China climbed again last month, rising by around 3% for March last year, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Of the 70 cities polled, 68 registered an increase from last year and an increase from the month before. This is a sign, some analysts say, restrictions on the housing market are not working. Chinese authorities implemented barriers to buying second-hand houses on March 1st in an effort to deflate a potential housing bubble. The new measures have partially worked. While prices for second-hand residential buildings are up, new residential buildings are even higher. Last month, the central government tried to reinforce a 20% tax on all second-hand home sales. The problem, some experts say, is that local officials have been charged with enforcing the tax. Local governments get benefits from housing sales, making them cautious of stifling the market. The rise in housing prices could also be fueling a housing rush as buyers try to seal the deal before prices increase even more. This is the third month in a row housing prices have increased. Speculators say it will climb till April, when the central government is set to introduce new control measures.
And still ahead on NTD China news, U.S. customs officials seized 15,000 fake toasters from China. Why China's tourism dollars have increased even as less foreign tourists are going there. And a young Chinese-Canadian actress hopes to use a beauty pageant to speak out for the suppressed. And welcome back. Counterfeit Chinese items are making headlines again. This time, nearly 15,000 potentially dangerous toasters were seized in Los Angeles, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection authorities. The toasters carried faulty safety markings by Underwriters Laboratories, or UL. The independent organization carries out tests to make sure products don't pose risks of fire, shock, or personal injury. A fake label means the product could have these hazards. The CBP seized 2 shipments of the toasters on March 8th and 28th. They are worth nearly $300,000 in retail stores. Out of all the goods that U.S. Customs officials seized last year, almost a quarter were consumer electronics or parts with potential safety or security risks. What killed the animals in Henan's Dongtuan village? Overnight, hundreds of animals mysteriously died this week, and while authorities say it has nothing to do with the bird flu, the explanation they do have may be much worse.
Dead pigs everywhere. A total of 410 pigs and 121 dogs were found dead in Dongtuan village in Henan province. They all died overnight and no one knows quite why. But one thing is certain, it wasn't just a coincidence.
I went into the pigsty to see the pigs lying all about. About 70 to 80% of the pigs died and lay motionlessly. The living knocked their heads against the wall non-stop.
Nearby pig farmers all reported the same phenomenon. After an initial investigation, officials ruled out disease as the cause of the deaths.
After investigating, the conclusion is that the deaths were not caused by an epidemic or a communicable disease, because the outbreak of an epidemic disease would not lead to the spread of the disease between different stocks or lead to sudden deaths.
With fears of the bird flu spreading and the mystery of over 16,000 dead pigs in a Shanghai river, this news probably comes as a relief to the villagers, but it's also made their fears of another kind grow. One villager reported an unusual, pungent smell of gas in her pigsty. That's led local authorities now to believe it was a gas leak from a nearby chemical plant that caused the deaths. A mere 650 feet away from Leo's pigsty, a chemical plant produces pharmaceutical products. For 10 years, residents have complained about the plant. According to local environmental authorities, it spews toxic gases like chlorine, hydrogen chloride, and hydrogen fluoride. Villagers say it makes their throats hurt and dizziness is a problem. Cancer rates are also high. Many people between the ages of 30 and 50 had died from it, according to the Dahe Daily, one of Henan's biggest newspapers. So far, their complaints about pollution from the plant have been left unanswered. A reporter who tried to enter the plant was told by a security guard that the media reports were untrue. The plant has temporarily stopped production after the mass death of the village's animals.
China's tourism industry is doing better than this time last year, at least in terms of profits, according to reports from the tourism industry. That is despite a decrease in foreign tourists. Here are some possible explanations for these trends.
China's Ministry of Tourism said last week that the number of incoming tourists has shrunk by 2% compared to last year's first quarter. The trend was the opposite for revenue from tourism, though. It increased by 15.8%, raising over $133 billion last year. The drop in tourists but a hike in profit seems contradictory, but it could be partially explained by the commercialization of China's cultural attractions.
There's really no area that's too sacred to put a gift shop.
It's ridiculous, like a zoo in some places.
Generally speaking, tourism in China can nickel and dime you to death if you don't know what you're doing.
The rise of the yuan may also be a factor. Over the past 20 years, Lin Hai says he has seen his tourist groups shrink as the yuan rises against the dollar. But at least for most Westerners, lower costs on the ground once they get to China work in their favor. Travel there is generally less than places like Europe and North America.
Price of transport, the price of food, the relatively cheap price of accommodation. If you compare that to the West, I mean, it's a lot cheaper.
And as Chinese themselves get wealthier, more and more are traveling to see their homeland.
They're going everywhere, doing everything because they have the resources to do it.
And they could account for tourism's increase, both in terms of profits and its commercialization.
Domestic tourists really love buying souvenirs and gifts to people when they get back. So that is one of the reasons why you have so many gift shops and souvenir shops around these tourist sites.
The Grand Canyon, you'll see, 4 or 5 gift shops. In China, the walkway will literally be lined with gift shops, like along the whole way.
The government has also encouraged the tourism industry. In 2000, it created 2 nationwide travel times called Golden Week. Workers have several days to go back home to see family and, of course, travel around China. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
Using a beauty pageant as a platform to promote religious freedom. That's what a Chinese-born student in Canada is hoping to do with this year's Miss World Canada.
A university student, actress, and human rights activist. At 23 years old, Chinese-born Anastasia Lin is taking on yet another challenge, Miss World Canada 2013. But it's not just the title she's after.
My platform is religious freedom. I do want to speak on behalf of the people in the world who don't have this freedom.
The student at the University of Toronto is living the motto of Miss World Canada, beauty with a purpose. In 2011, Lin was one of 11 stakeholder representatives to meet with Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird about Canada's Office of Religious Freedom. On the big screen, Lin has chosen films that highlight the importance of human rights.
I think it's during the process of making these movies, I find it really authentic. Those are the messages that I believe in. And being able to act them out and bring it to the audiences, I feel very profound.
Anastasia Lin says this former Miss World Canada inspired her to consider the pageant. But it was Anastasia's own contact with a former prisoner of conscience that motivated her to enter.
What happened to her was that I saw her a month after she came out of China. I can still see the bruises and the damages that's done to her body due to the torture in the labor camp.
That woman died several months later. Family members said she had been injected with toxic substances before she left China.
That was really heartbreaking for us, for the entire film crew. And that's when I decided to join the competition, and I'll be able to speak up for them.
Lin admits she's nervous going up against the other contestants, but her goal going into the pageant is keeping her grounded.
I know what I want to do with this title. And with this title, we can help a lot of people who are suffering, who lack the freedoms we enjoy in a free country, free society. So I think once the judges see that, they will understand and they will give me the support. And the support is not to me, it's to the people who are suffering.
Lin is currently coming third in the Miss World Canada People's Choice online poll. The pageant will take place on May 8th and 9th in Vancouver, BC. NTD News, Toronto, Canada.
And before we go today, a special note for our viewers around the New York area. From Saturday, April 20th to Sunday, 28th, Shenyun Performing Arts will have an 11-run show in New York's Lincoln Center. NTD is a media sponsor for Shenyun, and you can find out more about this classical Chinese dance company in this week's Discovering China that's coming up next. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend.